Hello and welcome to this video. I'm going to be walking you through step by step how to create 3D text effect in Photoshop. The first thing I need to do is to go ahead and choose the size of my Canva. In this case, I'm going to be using 1920 by 1080 pixels. I'll go ahead and create. First, I will need to go ahead and come over to this adjustment layer just to create a background, but I'm going to be using gradients. Come over to the gradient and come over to the basis. I'm going to be selecting the very first one right here, and then I'm going to come over to the color. For the black, I'm going to be using blue and hit on blue right here and go ahead. Okay, and for the white, I will come over to the white part as well and select light blue, something of this nature, and go ahead. Okay, close the gradient editor by hitting on OK as well. And for the linear, I want to make it radial. Okay, and I can just go ahead and reverse the color like this and come back to the scale and brighten it up to something of this nature, and then I can go ahead and close the gradient fill window. Now what I need to do is to go ahead and hit on T from my keyboard to have the text tool, and here you can basically write anything of your choice, but in this case I will just go ahead and write something like welcome. Hit on enter and hit on V to have move tool. I will just go ahead and resize my text to my text. Okay, there is no law in doing this. Just resize the text to something of this nature. Something like this is going to be okay, and I don't want my text to be straight like this, and for that I will come back to this warp tool. Just hit on this warp tool and come back to the center of your text. Just try to bend it to your text. There is no rules in doing this. Something like this is going to be nice, and we'll go ahead and hit on check mark. The next thing we need to do is to select this text layer, double click on the text layer to have the layer style, and then I want to come over to the stroke, hit on the stroke. Here you can go ahead and choose any color of your choice, but since I practice a lot of time, mine is already in purple, and I will just leave it to be purple just like this. And you can go ahead and choose the size. In this case I can even make it 35. Go ahead and hit on OK. Now the next thing I can possibly do is to hit on G to duplicate this layer. Once I have that, I will still go ahead and hit on Ctrl+T to have the transform tool, and once you've done that, you want to hit on the up arrow from your keyboard, and as well hit on the right arrow from your keyboard. This is where the trick is. You need to listen to this part. Okay, hit on the right arrow as well, and then you want to close it by hitting enter from your keyboard. Once you've done that, you want to hold down Control, Command, Alt and Shift, and then you want to hit on T. Once you are hitting on T, the text is going to be duplicating on its own. You want to continue doing it in the way that the 3D is going to pop up. Just continue doing it. Maybe you can add like 20 to 15 layers. In this case, I'm going to leave mine to be 17 layers, and once you have it like this, what I can possibly do is to come back to the second layer without selecting the first layer. Come back to the second layer, hold down your shift key and select the last layer as well, and now I can go ahead and hit on Ctrl+G to group everything. This very first layer, I want to right click on this effect and come back to where it says clear layer effects. I want to clear the effect, and now what I can possibly do is to go ahead and double click on this layer to have the layer style as well, and I want to come over to color overlay. Here I'm going to be choosing yellow as well. Okay, something of this nature, even something like this is going to be nice, and go ahead and hit on OK. I can still come over here and close the layer style, and just as we did before, you want to hit on Ctrl+G to duplicate the layer, and then hit on Ctrl+T for the transform tool, and just as we did before, hit on Ctrl+T to have the transform tool. And once you've done that, you want to hit on the up arrow and the right arrow, and to do that, go ahead and hit on enter from your keyboard. Now you can hold down your Control or Command, Alt and then Shift. Once you done that, you want to be hitting on T. Doing this, the yellow parts is going to be increasing. If you look closely, you're going to see that the yellow parts are all increasing, and as well new layers are being created. Okay, once I add something like this, just as we did before, you want to come back to the second layer, not the first. Come back to the second layer, hold down your shift and then select the last layer. Once you've done that, go ahead and hit on Ctrl+G to group everything as well. And now what I can possibly do is to come back to this first layer that we didn't select, come back to the effect, right click and go back to where it says clear layer style. You want to clear everything again, and you're going to come up with something like this. Double click on that layer to have the layer style, and you want to come back to the grid gradient. Here you can basically select any color of your choice, and that is going to depend on documents that you're working on and on the text you're working on. Okay, but in this case I'm just going to leave mine to be this. Hit on OK here as well. And what I can possibly do is to come out to the inner shadow. I want to hit on the inner shadow to have the whitish part. Like I said, there's no rules to doing this. Just follow your guide and follow your eye. Okay, something like this is going to be nice. And now I can as well come back to the drop shadow and hit on drop shadow. I'm going to come up with something just like this. We are already in line with 3D effects. I want to go ahead and hit on OK. And the next thing you can observe here is that this blue part is so flat, and we just need to add some depth to this blue part. In doing that, you want to select the group. Once you select the group, you want to select the first layer and drag it to create a group from that layer. You're going to come up with something like this. Now double click on the group you created from the main group to have the layer style as well. Okay, in this case I want to come back to color overlay again just to add more depth to this blue part right here. I want to come back to the color overlay. I'm going to come up with something like this, but I don't need that color. I'll just go ahead and choose something maybe like sky blue. Okay, something like this is going to be nice, and go ahead and hit on OK. What I can possibly do as well is to hit on the inner shadow just to have this whitish part right here. Okay, you can copy my settings, and this setting is going to be modified based on what you created. Once I have it like this, I can still go ahead and add some drop shadow. Okay, and the drop shadow, I just make the size to be 21 and the distance to be 1. Once you have it like this, you can see there are some depth already with our design, and now I can go ahead and hit on OK. Now the next thing I can possibly do is to come back to this very first group, this one right here. Okay, and double click on that group and come back to drop shadow as well. You're going to come up with something like this. Hit on OK. I want to come back to the second group as well. Double click on the group and come back to drop shadow. You're going to come up with something very beautiful like this. You can modify this to your taste. You can make the size to be like 40 something or even 24. Something like this is going to be very nice. The spread is 0 and the distance is just maybe something like 3. Go ahead and hit on OK. You're going to have your 3D effect just like this. And the last thing I can possibly do with this video is to hit on Ctrl Alt Shift and then hit on E to have everything on a single layer. Just right click and come out to convert to smart objects. Come out to filter and come out to camera raw filter. Wait for some seconds. Talk over this to have the before and the after. Come out to the light, increase the contrast. Okay, reduce some of the highlight, increase the shadow, and add some black. Okay, now I don't need anything from the color. Come out to the effects, increase the clarity. Okay, and maybe decrease the texture. If I should add the texture, it's going to be more red. Come out to the vignette and add some vignette to our design like this. For the cover, I don't need anything. For the color meme style, I just need to remove some of these reddish parts, and for that I want to desaturate that red part like this. Okay, and come out to the details and just increase the details. Go ahead and sign. This is what we just created. You can see the way it turned out to be. And this was what I created. They're almost the same thing. Using the same method. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you do, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so that whenever I upload another video just like this, you will always be the first person to be notified. Having said this, I'm going to see you in the next. Cheers. Peace out.